Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today we have the pleasure of watching Xethrus from the EU server playing in one of my favourite tanks in the game. It is the tier 10 Swedish tank destroyer, the STRV 103B. Now immediately I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that Xethrus does not use binoculars on this vehicle and also does not have their view range capped out, although that's a bad statement, at 445, which is the max spotting distance in the game, but it's not actually the maximum view range because of course your view range counters the enemy camo. Now, one thing that I really love about this build is it's something that I've been thinking about doing myself on the STRV 103B for the longest of times. I am 90% sure, although I would love for Xethrus to clarify somewhere on the internet, either on their What Replays link, or alternatively I'd love a comment in the down below. If I'm correct in thinking that Xethrus, you are most likely using a turbo on this tank because your vehicle inside the siege mode is going above the 10 km/h max speed limit that the vehicle usually has, with a gun rammer and with vents. The only problem with a build like this is because the STRV 103B has a pretty darn bad base view range of 360 meters, that unless you use binoculars or coated optics on a STRV 103B, and the latter you'll have to also be using a premium consumable with a really good crew, you're never going to get the view range of the vehicle up to a very healthy amount, which won't allow you to snipe at decent distances because you're not going to see your opponents, right? However, one thing that I've been thinking to myself is, as this vehicle has one of the highest damage per minute in the game, I believe it is third after the Badger and the Tortoise, how good would this vehicle be if you were to focus on maximizing the vehicle's damage output, especially at the short to mid ranges? Now, a lot of you might be thinking, well, why don't you just drop the turbo on this tank? And while I've talked about this before on the STRV 103B, it's always been with my replays. I'm gonna love commenting on this replay because it kind of just completely backs up with what my vibe is with the STRV 103B as well, is that probably the most important module on the tank is the turbocharger. Because by increasing your top speed limit by 4 km/h forwards, and I guess 2 km/h backwards, because this vehicle can't get a mobility slot unless you were to put a Bond turbo on this tank, and this would be one of the best tanks in the game to invest your Bond turbo on if you enjoy its gameplay, then you're changing your top speed limit inside the siege mode from 10 to 14 forwards, which allows, well, it's just a 40% increase. It's absolutely staggering. And it changes the vehicle from being a tank that you absolutely, utterly, pretty much had to leave the siege mode if you wanted to be fairly mobile, to now being kind of as slow as the old T95 used to go back in the day, and kind of 3/4 of the speed, or just under 70% if I'm being exact, of what the mouse is able to go if it's not taking any field mods and it's not using a turbo itself. And that is not bad. Going 14 km/h in this tank forwards is enough to be able to deal with some close quarters combat situations, as we're going to be seeing that Xethrus is going to have to deal with later on in this battle. Alright, so this is kind of your typical STRV 103B game when your team is starting to lose. It really hits this sweet spot in the middle of the battle where the enemies are forced to attack. The STRV 103B, if you don't use a turbocharger on this vehicle, is actually horrendous when it comes down to its ability to attack. Apart from just driving in front of somebody, awkwardly entering the siege mode, aiming at them, and then just going to town on them and hoping that they bounce. If they've got a 120mm gun and they're not firing heat, they're very likely to bounce on you, by the way. Then it's just a little bit awkward. However, with the turbo, you can actually manage to come round the corner at a surprisingly alarming rate, faster than a lot of tanks are able to go backwards, and you can use that to your advantage. After seeing what Xethrus is going to do in this replay, I absolutely, utterly now want to test the vehicle myself without any vision and while focusing on mobility and DPM, because that's one of my favorite ways to play this thing, as a little bit of an assault tank destroyer. It's kind of got the DPM of a Badger, the DPM of a Tortoise, but incredible camo rating even on the move, unlike those two vehicles. And to be able to have the mobility with the turbo and to kind of like pump up the DPM, I can think this thing would be voracious. And engagements in World of Tanks do feel like they're becoming less and less of kind of a sniping affair and more of your kind of grind out in the most important location scenarios. Now, one thing that could be really cool as well is with the dual equipment slots. If you were seriously flush on cash, you could put yourself a Bond turbo on this tank, Bond vents, and a Bond gun rammer in one of your slots, and then for those incredibly long distance games where you're pretty sure that you're going to have to spot for yourself, maybe you could drop the vents and use coated optics or even binoculars on this vehicle while still using the turbo and using the gun rammer. And I think just having that kind of flexibility on the Stridsvagn 103B could be outrageous for the vehicle. So there we go, Xethrus playing the most accurate tank in the game. I'd be really interested to know as well what kind of field mods Xethrus would be using on this vehicle. But I can't see that his hit points have been increased, so I'm not sure if he's probably using all of the field mods. Actually, it's not. I don't think the tank destroyers gain increased hit points, or maybe they do. Maybe I'm speaking out of my backside right now. Talking about backsides, Xethrus is nailing the T100LT in the back of their tank, and this is where the Stridsvagn 103B with a gun rammer and vents, how I'm 90% sure that Xethrus has got this vehicle equipped, is just absolutely ripping its opponents apart. This vehicle can get up to a staggering rate of fire. 9 rounds a minute base. If you take into account crew skills, premium consumables, brothers in arms, vents, and a gun rammer, this thing is just pumping up and up and up and probably hitting the 11 round a minute mark or even more. And that's getting close to a 5-second reload. And when you're doing 390 damage so consistently, yeah, this thing absolutely slaps when it comes down to picking apart its opponents. And while the start of this game was a little bit sleepy, it was a little bit lazy almost. Look at that, just 1 or 2 minutes of gameplay and Xethrus is already up to 4,700 damage, and that's why this tank is just absolutely amazing. However, even the gold rounds are not amazing enough to go through the front of the Jagdpanzer E100. Xethrus also doesn't quite manage to track the E100 Jagdpanzer there, and he fires a high explosive round for 700 damage, shaving off nearly half the hit points of Xethrus's tank. However, this is where that turbocharger comes in handy, and the 350 millimeters of gold penetration on this tank in this kind of a scenario are enough to deal with the Jagdpanzer. And that Jägeru did not expect such a good rate of fire. But now Xethrus is getting dealt with from behind and he's only got 398 hit points left. He's got 400 hit points against 5,000 in a 1 versus 5 scenario. Now down to just 123 hit points. Xethrus shows immense control and immense clarity in that situation, ignoring the Jagdpanzer 100 in front of him, who's managed to lock down, turning his entire tank around, killing the light tank, and then going back to town on the Jagdpanzer E100. And just like that, Xethrus has managed to change his 1 versus 5 scenario with 100 hit points against 5,000 hit points to a 1 versus 3 scenario, but still against 4,500 hit points on the enemy team. One of my favorite things about this replay is the tension that Xethrus was trying to complete TD Mission 15 for the Object 260, one of the hardest things to do in the game. You have to deal 8,000 damage and you have to get 6 kills and you have to win the battle. So Xethrus, at this moment, I think he was probably thinking, there's no way I'm going to win this scenario, but maybe I can just plug in another 1,000 damage, and then I can at least manage to complete TD15, which will help me to be able to get the Object 260 if he hasn't already skipped it and he's just trying to get his skips back. However, of course, there's kind of like that treat as well. If he can win the battle, he'll complete it with honors, get all of those extra juicy rewards, and definitely make it a lot easier to be able to get the Object 260, even without having to play artillery, right? Okay, so 5 kills in this game, 6,975 damage, and it looks like Xethrus's camo rating is absolutely wild on this vehicle. Do you know what, Xethrus, when I see you have camo rating like that, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe you're actually using the camo rating module on this vehicle and not vents. But please, again, we've got to know. You might be setting this vehicle up to have extra concealment on the move, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Stridsvagn 103B, if you were using a bounty concealment device on this vehicle, could probably get up to the range of about 40% concealment when moving, or at least the mid-30s, and that's a pretty outrageous total. And thinking about playing the STRV 103B in that kind of fashion even though you don't have the view range, if you have the camo rating, you're still going to be able to control it, and you're going to have more chance of sneaking ill-prepared into certain situations. So an IS-4 bounces a heat round off Xethrus' tank. He reacts beautifully, putting a shot right up through the tier 10 Soviet heavy tank, and knowing now that his position has been revealed and that there's probably not long until the enemy either cap or alternatively until the Kranvang advances down behind him, he has to watch out in this scenario and keep moving. So he's going backwards. Remember, this vehicle has a 45 km/h top speed limit backwards and a 50 km/h top speed limit forwards. But as we can see, Xethrus clearly is using the turbo. He's actually going at 54 forwards, but he will still be limited to 47 backwards. So Xethrus decides, considering he's going to have to drive about 800 meters to protect the cap circle here, that it's probably actually worth stopping the tank, turning around, and making use of the extra top speed that they're going to have forwards. This is just World of Tanks beauty, what we're seeing here, boys and girls. A scenario where a player using their skill and knowledge of the tank and knowledge of the enemy vehicles has dealt with a tricky situation and is now forcing the enemy, who were thinking, we're just going to chase them down and take away Xethrus' last 123 hit points, to now where Xethrus is going, okay guys, well, I've managed to chip down that 5k deficit to now a 3,200 deficit, and all I have to do is hopefully get another 939 damage dealt in this game to be able to complete a mission with honors. So 30 seconds left on the cap. Luckily, the Kranvang didn't enter it, and Xethrus is using the fallen trees to be able to now find the Jagdpanzer 100 without getting spotted. Now reversing back, having spotted the Jaegeru, who clearly knows what's up, as it's very unlikely they don't have sixth sense. Xethrus whips a shell on the upper plate of the Jagdpanzer 100. Now with 11 seconds left on the cap circle, Xethrus aims for the lower plate this time, reducing the cap by 90% and putting their first of many shots that they're going to have to put in if they want to win this game. So Xethrus, once again, doesn't get spotted by the Kranvang there. I'm really thinking he might be using the camo module in retrospect. Xethrus, please, 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 you have to tell me. I might even try and whisper you in game to try and find out what exactly we're using. The idea of using that camo module to be extra sneaky, but you're going to be losing the holistic nature of the tank from not using the vents or the gun ram or the DPM is one thing that I'm very interested about. But look at what Xethrus is doing right now. He's running rings around his opponents, and he doesn't even get spotted by the Jagdpanzer 100. Using this bush perfectly to go as far back behind it as he can and be able to shoot through the bush where the Jagdpanzer is unable to see him. And so now with another 2 shots in, Xethrus, unless he's blind fired something, needs 133 damage to be able to complete his mission with the 6 kills required. The siren goes off now with 2 minutes left on the game for Xethrus to be able to win. Clearly he didn't hit the Jagdpanzer 100 there, as it didn't reset the cap circle. So Xethrus is going to change his angle, change his position, and then try and deal with the Jagdpanzer by being a little bit aggressive here. Okay, so he's managed to sneak up again. He's not going within 50 meters, which means he won't be proxy spotted, and bam, right into the back of the Jaegeru. There you go. HT-15 done for the Object 260. Great result, but can you manage to take down the last 2 vehicles? Now with 5,000 hit points reduced to 1,600 hit points, Xethrus has nothing to lose. He's completed his mission. The only way he can improve it to honors is to win the battle. So, ladies and gentlemen, Xethrus, take it away. And what is more dangerous than evidently a very skilled player playing their tank masterfully with nothing to lose? Xethrus securing his 7th kill there against the Jagdpanzer 100. But the Kranvang still has 1,459 hit points. Where is that Kranvang going to be? Now, I think what Xethrus is considering is that the Kranvang probably went all the way to the south to be able to chase him and is now probably going to be coming up along these ridge lines. So Xethrus is going to try and find him on the ridge lines, get into the trees, and there's the Kranvang. 43 seconds left on the game. Xethrus doesn't get spotted. His camo rating is absolutely incredible. Puts a shot right through the side of the Kranvang, now needing another 3 shots. But if the Kranvang's firing heat, he's easily going to be able to go through his lower plate. But glory days, the Kranvang's firing APCR rounds, so he can't over angle on the lower plate of the Stutzfang 103B, and having bounced 2 shells, it doesn't look like he fires the 3rd, bouncing another one, and Xethrus manages to secure the Kolobanov's medal in possibly my favorite game of the year. I just absolutely loved this game. I was on the edge of my seat. Whenever I watch a replay, and I know the result going into the replay, because when I'm looking for awesome games like Xethrus is here, I go onto the What Replays website, so I know he's going to win. I know it's going to be a good game, even though I know he's going to win, when there are moments when I basically say, there's no way he's going to win as well, right? This was just an absolute incredible game. It was one of my favorite games. And it was actually my favorite game of the year so far, but we've got a couple of months left. So if you think you've had a better game, or if you have a better game over this autumn/winter period, then make sure you upload it on the What Replays website. And if you want to, put my name in the title to be able to get my attention. Xethrus. What a result here. The one that everybody wants, the Kolobanov's medal for standing alone against at least 5 opponents, a Radley Walters medal for your 8 kills, a high caliber for the 10,668 damage that you dealt, completing heavy tank 15 for the Object 260, one of the hardest things to do in the game. A Spartan medal for ricocheting with less than 10% of your hit points, a tank sniper medal for doing a huge amount of that damage at long range, 4,000 actually. And when I think about it, that's not much, considering Xethrus dealt 10,668 damage. 4,000 out of 10,000 is not even that much. And a Defender medal as well for simply harassing that Jagdpanzer E100 in the cap circle. Xethrus, a massive thank you to you for uploading this on the What Replays website. It was an absolute pleasure to watch, and I hope that my commentary even did it a little bit of justice. I just knew that I really wanted to share this one with the community. And please, Xethrus, if you're out there, let me know what equipment you were using on this vehicle. Were you using a turbo gun rammer vents? Were you using a turbo vents and concealment module? Or were you using turbo rammer and a concealment module? I'd be really interested. And hopefully all of you out there enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And let me know in the comments how you would choose to set up the STRV 103B. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.